back like we never left. It's Double Move Sports. You already know what it is. I'm Stef Albiero. I'm here with Alex Lott, the fantasy phenom. What's up, brother? How you doing today?
This is the last pod we will do that will not be a regular season pod where we're talking starts of the week, deep shots of the week, getting ready for game day. So this is going to be a good one. We saved the best for last, and wow, things are getting crazy. It is, the biggest transaction week of the year. We were just talking before the show. Mohamed Sanu just got axed, so it'll be interesting to see which wide receiver needy team he ends up on. And Fournette, as of now, has not signed. The rumors are getting out of hand. We've heard Pats, we've heard Chiefs, we have heard Bucks, we have heard, who else? The Bills. Just about everyone seems like they have some sort of interest in Fournette. By the time you're listening to this, he probably will have signed. Maybe he hasn't, and the mystery will continue on. So we're going to get into that in a minute, though. But wow, it's crazy, and it's NFL season, man. I am hyped.
Let's hope Fournette doesn't haunt us any more than he already has. And Alex, I got to give you massive props right now. I got to give you credit. You had Fournette as a cut candidate. You talked about in our Deep Shots of the Year episode, you said, look, grab Raquel Armstead with your last pick. Now, I don't know if Raquel Armstead is the guy in Jacksonville, but as of right now, he should be the guy there, and you called it, so props to you on that. And shout out to everybody who just gave us a sub off of that Raquel Armstead call. Appreciate it, guys. But if you like what we're doing
we'll try to bring more bold, hot takes that come true. Now, Steph, I give you credit for praising me for the one I got right, but not calling me out every time I get one wrong. So thank you for sparing me there.
There you go. Well, guys, if you like what we're doing here on the show, hit that like button. That's huge for us, as well as that subscribe button. Still making a huge push here leading into the season. Follow us during the year, and you will win championships. We did it last season. We have the case studies at this point to prove that we help fantasy teams win. And as always, you can hit us up on Twitter or in the YouTube comments if you have any questions. Probably Twitter is going to be your best bet. If it's super important, we'll get to the YouTube comments at some point. But Alex, let's talk about this Jacksonville Jaguars backfield situation. We got Raquel Armstead. We got Devine Ozigbo, if I'm saying that right. And then Chris Thompson. Is there really a name that you want at all in this backfield? I picked up Armstead in one of my leagues where I did have Fournette, but I'm not feeling great about it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I have a spot on my bench, maybe a guy that's not exciting or someone I picked up late, I'm happy to get either Thompson in a PPR league or Raquel Armstead. I think Armstead probably has more upside in the sense that ceiling-wise, Leonard Fournette was, a top 10 fantasy football running back last year? I don't think Armstead has that kind of ceiling, but I think as a ceiling, he could be a top 24 guy. And that's what I said a month ago. If Armstead gets the Leonard Fournette role, there's no reason he shouldn't be a top 24 guy with the kind of volume he could potentially get even on a bad offense. So that's like the ceiling for him. I wouldn't expect him to be a top 10 guy. He's not like a Tony Pollard where if all of a sudden he becomes the starter, he's an RB1. But if I had to bet on Thompson, Armstead, or Ozigbo, I think I'd rather have Armstead just because with Thompson, he will have value, and he was going to have value regardless for the entire season. We saw what he could do back in Washington with Jay Gruden in the past. I think he will have a very safe pass-catching role. Think of him as almost like a Nyheim Hines in that offense. It's one of ththose things where, or even Theo Riddick a few years back, if you have one of these guys, you can plug him in, hope he gets 5 catches for 50 yards and strolls into the end zone, but you're never really excited about putting him in your lineup. So Thompson to me is someone who late in drafts you could pick up as a bye week fill-in, injury insurance, just in case if running backs go.
He's a streamer.
Yeah, running backs go very, very quickly, and there's a lot of scenarios where you can be caught with nothing at running back. So Thompson's a guy where you can at least stash him and have someone to plug in. But I'm probably going for Armstead here just because I think the upside is a little bit higher on a week-to-week basis. But again, there's a chance we come out and Ozigbo is the guy. And if that, I wish I had a crystal ball and I could tell you which way it was going to go. But right now, I think it is Armstead. And if it comes out and it's Ozigbo week 1, I have no problem cutting him and trying to pick up Ozigbo off waivers if he hasn't already been claimed.
I'm not trying to make fantasy football harder than it is. This backfield is irrelevant. This is like the Washington team. Unless it's a throwaway pick at the end of your draft, maybe you pick Armstead up. But even then, it's just a dart throw. We literally had the guy who finished the RB7 last year being drafted around the RB15 range, so a third or fourth round running back. And now we have even more unproven running backs taking over. And I don't know where this narrative is coming from. Like, I saw the Roto World blurb after Fournette got cut, and you hear the narratives out there. A lot of guys talk about it. Like, what is this smear campaign against Leonard Fournette? He's actually a good running back. Like, I know he was inefficient through the air last year, but he was just getting destroyed. People say, like, oh, he's got no juice left. Well, he was 8th in the NFL with carries that went for over 15 yards. He had 11 total breakaway runs. Dude, I don't know why everyone's saying Fournette's just completely washed at this point. He's 25 years old. He has the college production. He has the draft capital. So I don't know where that's coming from. I guess, I don't know. He's just kind of the fun guy that everybody wants to, hate on right now. I think he'll end up hopefully in a good situation for those that have him on their rosters, dynasty or redraft right now.
Please don't be Tampa Bay. Please don't ruin my Ronald Jones hype, Leonard Fournette. Do not ruin this for me. Please don't be Tampa Bay. Please don't ruin my Ronald Jones hype, Leonard Fournette. Do not ruin this for me.
No.
Please don't ruin my Ronald Jones hype, Leonard Fournette. Do not ruin this for me.
Look, and you talk about Chris Thompson for me. Like, I'm not touching Chris Thompson. I already was fading Chris Thompson.
It's just not worth it. It's just not like what's the point of Chris Thompson when you could? Chris Thompson's not winning you a league. I mean, I think is what we're saying.
Exactly. And for Jay Gruden, who the Jags brought in, he has a history of how he wants to use his running backs. Every year, it's pretty much 250 carries, big bruiser on the ground, and then a low receiving volume, maybe 20 targets, 30 targets. So I think that's how Armstead's going to be used. Like you said, like he's an RB2 in the right matchup. But I mean, this Jags team is not going to be great. And I'm not expecting Armstead to be a stud, but I think he will be the one to take. If you're going to take a shot, it's Armstead just for the volume. He's going to be a Marlon Mack, Jordan Howard type guy. He's a wrecking ball. He has some speed relative to his size. So I know I said Jordan Howard, Marlon Mack. Maybe you can take him a step lower and get a guy relate him to Adrian Peterson. But either way, I'm out on this backfield. Well, let's talk some strategy here. Enough about Lenny.
Seriously, enough about Lenny.
He's been the hottest topic here over the last week leading into the season, which is really of everything we could have talked about in this COVID year, Tampa Bay, this is what we're talking about, Leonard Fournette getting cut. But let's talk about quarterbacks in these redraft leagues, whether it's 10-team, 12-team, 14-team league. I guess 10 teams a little bit different. But let's talk about for 12 and 14-team leagues, what's the strategy or approach that you should take at the quarterback position? I think there's an optimal strategy that a lot of guys, believe they have. I think you and I have one, and we're pretty in agreement on it. And it's got to be Lamar and Mahomes. I have Lamar over Mahomes, but they're neck and neck. There's these top two guys. But beyond that, what's your approach typically at the quarterback position in these one QB leagues?
Here's the thing. I mean, I know draft season is kind of coming to a close, but I'm always someone who waits on the quarterback position in drafts. There's just so much value later in drafts, and you can pick up guys that are all in the same tier. I mean, think about it. You're only starting, one quarterback a week. So if you're in a 12-team league or a 14-team league, there's only 12, 14 starting quarterbacks. A lot of people don't hold them on their bench. So there's a ton of guys on waivers that are available to stream week in and week out. And honestly, the difference between the low-end quarterback ones and the next, 10, 12 quarterbacks is not a ton. Like if I'm looking at last season, Kyler Murray was the quarterback 12 with 18.6 fantasy points per game. And there were 14 other quarterbacks behind Kyler Murray that were in 3 points per game of him. So no, I mean Kyler is definitely better than those guys because he's giving you more points on a week in and week out basis. But there's 14 other guys that are only 1, 2, 3 points per week below where Kyler Murray is. And it's that's not going to move the needle for you. So to me, there are a couple guys that set themselves apart. There's Lamar and Mahomes at the top. If you want to take them early in the draft, if you get them in the second round, back of the second, early third in a 12-team league, I'm not going to fault you for that pick because they are pretty consistent guys that you can, they're as safe as it gets, and barring injury, they're going to be the absolute anchor of your team. And they're pretty bust-proof at this point in their career. Lamar with his rushing ability and Mahomes because we've seen it for 2 years straight now. But for me, I normally like to wait just because there are so many guys I can get later. And to that point, Steph, I know you're a big proponent of streaming as well, but you can always look at waivers. Listen to us during the season. Shameless plug. We do starts of the week. We do deep shots of the week. We're going to be throwing out these names at the quarterback position. You can pick up and plug in. Last year we streamed Derek Carr and Ryan Tannehill and Ryan Fitzpatrick, Daniel Jones. This is some massive weeks. And this spells it out perfectly because last season, week 16, championship week, if you're in a good fantasy football league, is week 16. These were the top 3 quarterbacks on the week. Number 1 was Daniel Jones. Number 2 was Andy Dalton. And number 3 was Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Ew.
So you could have literally rolled out Andy Dalton in your championship, and you had an advantage over someone with Patrick Mahomes. So at the quarterback spot, there's just so much value based on matchup. Dalton and Fitzpatrick, I believe, were actually playing against each other that week. So a Dolphins or a Bengals defense is not something you're scared of. So it was probably very, very predictable. So that's it for me. Like, there's so much value you can get later. Why waste an early pick on a quarterback when you can find one later on and you can use those stud picks on those running backs and wide receivers? So that's my strategy. Steph, I imagine you agree with me here. We've talked about this before. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, the thing I like to know going into every draft, and it's something that it's not going to be set in stone every time, but it's kind of knowing when, a certain tier of wide receivers and running backs are on the board, and tight ends, I should say, of when you set that rule for yourself, make that line in the sand to say, okay, if Deshaun Watson is here past this pick, if he falls to where I think he's a value, then I'll pick him up. And so that's getting deep into the nuances of the game. But like 9 times out of 10, if you just wait to the end, you can scoop guys up. And my approach really, if I can't get one of these, Lamar, Mahomes, Dak, even the Russell, Kyler, Deshaun tier, then I just wait all the way to the end, either get a Matt Stafford, even an Aaron Rodgers. I love Cam Newton this year as an upside shot. To me, there's really 3 upside shot guys that I'm looking for at every draft if I can't get one of those studs. And you name the first one, it's Cam Newton. The other one's Joe Burrow. And the other one would be, it's gross. Don't hate me here. But honestly, man, like if you are literally just scraping the bottom of the barrel, I don't mind Tyrod Taylor. I don't mind Derek Carr. I don't mind Ryan Tannehill.
Derek Carr is slept on. I don't know why everyone hates Derek Carr. He's not bad.
He's not. He's extremely efficient. And this year they're putting yak monsters all around him. I think that offense is going to get better. So, yes, that's kind of the approach. Either you get a stud early or you wait all the way to the end. Don't be sacrificing a second-round pick that could be Austin Eckler to get Lamar Jackson when you could literally get Matt Ryan 7 rounds later, 5 rounds later, right? So that's kind of the approach that you want here, and they're so streamable. I would rather stream a quarterback more than I would stream a tight end. So if it comes to, look, should I take Mahomes or Lamar, or should I take Kelsey or Kittle? I'm always leaning more towards the tight end side. Now, granted, I do think there's ranges where they're going to fall. So that's more for every fantasy player in their own minds to know, hey, what point in the draft are these guys going to be values for me?
And Steph, we can think about it like this. I mean, you mentioned, would you rather have Eckler in the second round or use that pick on Lamar or Mahomes? And Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes are the fun picks. But think about it this way. Would you rather have Austin Eckler and Matt Ryan on your team or Lamar Jackson and Tony Pollard? I would take Eckler and Matt Ryan because they're both going to be solid contributing starters for my team. Eckler has the potential to be, a top 5 guy at running back. We saw it last season. Or with the Lamar pick, you're getting that stud at quarterback, but the fall off at the running back position is just much, much, much bigger than it is at the quarterback spot. So I know a lot of people have drafted, but just know, like, going into the season, if you have a quarterback, one of these middling quarterbacks, like it could have been Baker last year, and you draft Baker, he's not doing it for you, be willing to cut him or to pick someone else up and start him over Baker Mayfield, because you can project on a week-to-week basis based on the numbers, based on the player, based on the matchup, who's going to have a big week. And no, it doesn't always hit, but most of the time you can do a pretty good job of streaming the quarterback position, and you're going to be just fine. And
the last mic drop for this case is 2019 Jameis Winston.
Let's go.
2019 Jameis Winston.
Yes, 30-30, baby. But he was a great fantasy quarterback.
Let's talk about some of our upside shots at tight end. So we're talking about the late shots at quarterback. Let's look at the other position that you could take a late shot on and just use that as your position throughout the year. Another position that you could potentially stream. On this channel, we've talked about Blake Jarwin. We've talked about TJ Hawkinson. We've even talked about Jack Doyle as a season start streamer with some good matchups early on with the quarterback that targets the tight end in the red zone. But let's talk about some other late upside shots at tight end. And I'm talking super late here. And so for my first one, I'm going to talk about Chris Herndon. The hype train is real. It's a hot take. Just like your Ryquell Armstead take, I'm putting my stamp down on Chris Herndon. And when it pans out, I'm going to take my victory lap.
post-hype sleeper.
Dude, he really is the definition of that. Most recent reports, I know, and this is where this whole take might fall apart. Herndon reportedly did miss a practice or two with, quote, chest tightness, but he was back on the field today, just limited in practice, but he was out there, so he's back. And right now his ADP is the tight end 21. In 2018, this is 2 years ago, his production for a rookie at tight end was prolific. He was taken out of the 4th round, and he also had a rookie quarterback in Sam Darnold's first year, and he saw 56 targets, 39 receptions, 500 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He was top 10 in yards per reception amongst tight ends. He was also top 10 in yards per target, top 10 in red zone receptions. And then the wheels fell off completely in 2019. He had a 4-game suspension to start the year. Then he was hurt in and out of the lineup all season. Seemed like Gase was just totally out on him in terms of putting him in there. And we saw Ryan Griffin even have some relevant weeks as a streaming asset in about 5 of his games.
Yeah, he did there for a while.
Ryan Griffin had 320 yards and 5 touchdowns. So Darnold has shown us that he looks to his tight ends in the red zone. I think Herndon is a guy who can go up there and make plays.
I mean, honestly, looking at this Jets team, it felt crowded there for a while, but these receivers are dropping like flies. I think I saw something. I'll fact check myself on this one, but did they not just bring in Dante Moncrief?
Oh, no.
To their receiver room? I know Jamison Crowder has missed some time.
Perriman's hurt.
They signed Dante Moncrief, and I think he's going to get cut before the season. He's probably just a camp replacement because they need people to be out there on the field. But Denzel Mims has missed time. Jamison Crowder's been out. Anunwa is out for the season. So the Jets are actually pretty thin at the wide receiver spot. Perriman has been out. So if these guys can't get out on the field and they can't stay healthy throughout the season, Darnold's going to have to throw the ball to somebody. There was some hype around Le'Veon Bell today after all the turmoil we've had with him and Adam Gase. Adam Gase is saying he needs to utilize Bell as a wide receiver. And I'm like, if they're using Bell as a wide receiver, great. Great running back. He's kind of like a hybrid between the two anyway. I have no doubt they're going to use Chris Herndon a lot in the passing game as well. So keep an eye on that Jets situation. And I actually don't mind stashing Herndon on the end of the bench. If the Jets are hurting for wide receivers in week 1, Herndon could come out and have a really big game, and you might have something at the tight end spot or have a really good trade chip to move to a tight end needy team. So it's deep, but if you draft someone, if you're in a deep league or you draft and you have if Alshon Jeffrey is on your bench, move him to your IR spot if you have it. Throw Herndon on the bottom of the bench and see. I
love
what
it,
happens.
man. And Herndon is the perfect pick to maybe put a $1 bid on early if you are a guy who had a Jack Doyle as your streamer. Maybe you're iffy about Blake Jarwin. You know I love Jarwin, but just as another guy, we love taking these deep shots. And Herndon's situation to me looks very much like Darren Waller last year. The Jets threw the ball only 2 fewer times than the Raiders, and Waller had a 24% target share, 4th amongst all tight ends. So he's just in a situation where all the pieces around him aren't great, and he's just getting this funneled target volume. And you look at the athleticism, Herndon's a 6'4", 250-pound guy, and you're getting him at a discount because of last year. So Herndon is one of those guys at tight end 21. You can do a lot worse than that for a literally last pick, a guy that you can pick up right now in some of your leagues if you're not feeling great at the tight end spot. Maybe you do have that Jack Doyle streaming option and you want to pair him with an upside guy. But Alex, who you going with is your favorite late round upside tight end this year?
I'm going to go with the guy that we were actually really excited about early in the offseason. And us, along with a lot of other people in the fantasy football industry, kind of cooled off of him a little bit because of what they did in the draft. And it's Noah Fant. We were all about Noah Fant. It's him and Cortland Sutton. Drew Lock's going to take a step forward. Fant's a great athlete. Then they go out and they draft Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler, and we all think, okay, is there really going to be enough target volume in this offense for Noah Fant to produce? And now that his ADP is where it is, I'm kind of thinking I'm in on Noah Fant and taking the shot on him because, Steph, we talked about it before. 2 of the biggest correlations for breakout tight ends are draft capital and athleticism. And Noah Fant was a first-round pick in the 2019 draft, 20th overall, and this guy is a heck of an athlete. He's 6'4", 250. He runs a 4.5 40-yard dash with a 39.5-inch vertical. This dude is an absolute freak athlete, As a tight end at 6'4", 250, he runs a faster 40 than his own teammate Cortland Sutton, than Nick Chubb, than Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara, Michael Gallup. So Noah Fant is like literally last season, he took like a 75-yard touchdown to the house. That's what you're looking for in these tight end breakouts. You mentioned Darren Waller last year, great athlete. We saw that breakout. A couple years back, we saw it in George Kittle, Evan Ingram even further back than that. So Noah Fant has that kind of profile along with the draft capital that is very, very, very good. It's a very good indicator of the tight ends that are going to break out. Now, for me, the one downside is a lot of it's relying on Drew Lock. You know, if Drew Lock comes out and he lights the world on fire, I think Noah Fant's going to have a really good year. If Drew Lock struggles, we might not see the breakout we want out of Noah Fant. But, I mean, he's being drafted right now as the tight end 12 in round 10. There's probably a lot of leagues out there where people just don't know about Noah Fant. He slipped through your draft and made it to the waiver wire. If that's the case, pick him up, throw him on the end of your bench. Is not just going to be a fluky game if he goes off. I think Fant legitimately has what it takes to take a jump to that next tier at the tight end position. Historically, tight ends have really, really rough rookie seasons, so this would be the time for Noah Fant to make that jump.
Yep.
If we look at some of the guys from the past couple seasons that have had that year 2 tight end breakout, I mean, it just points to Noah Fant. If this is going to be, if this is going to be the Broncos tight end and weapon of the future, this would be the time for him to make that jump. If we look at George Kittle as a rookie, he had 43 receptions, 515 yards, 2 touchdowns. Not great. Year 2, though, he had 88 receptions, 1,377 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Doubled his production, over-doubled his production.
That's wild.
And then Mark Andrews, he had 43 receptions for 552 yards and 3 touchdowns as a rookie. In year 2, 64 receptions, 852 yards, and 10 touchdowns. So a massive jump. Fant last year showed flashes. He ended up with 40 catches for 562 yards and 3 touchdowns. That is almost identical to the rookie stat lines for George Kittle and Mark Andrews. I'm looking for Noah Fant to put up one of those year 2 stat lines this season, and I think it's going to come with an explosive Broncos offense if Drew Lock can get the job done. So I'm excited for Noah Fant. I wish I had him in more leagues because I think he could be the guy this year.
Yeah, when tight ends break out, they break out hard. You see a guy go.
They come out of nowhere. That's the thing. They come out of nowhere.
It's not that difficult to do either. I mean, the tight end, whatever it was, 11 or 12 last year was Jason Witten. So it's like, okay, you were at 17th, and now you're going to jump up to number 7. But nonetheless, I mean, he's that guy who has all the data points going for him being a tight end that breaks out.
All right, Steph. I think it's time to move over to our primary segment of the day. I know I'm super excited about it. It is our fantasy MVP candidates for this season. Now, we're each going to throw out 3 guys that we think are strong candidates to be the fantasy MVP this year. And a fantasy MVP is a guy that is going to win you your league. Like, this could be someone drafted in the first round. This could be someone drafted in the last round. It doesn't really have a definition. It's just someone you want on your team, and it's going to set you apart. And come championship week, we're going to look at all the rosters that are in championships and say, 50% of them have this guy. If we're looking at last year, Christian McCaffrey, Michael Thomas, Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, all could have been considered a fantasy MVP. It doesn't have to be a sleeper. It doesn't have to be necessarily a value. It's just a guy that's going to step up and take you to the ship. So, Steph, I'll kick it over to you first. Who is your first fantasy MVP candidate for the 2020 season?
I'm all aboard this hype train with everybody else. I'm so excited to watch what he's going to do this year, taking this jump after a pretty solid rookie season, an offensive rookie of the year season. And it's Kyler Murray. It's a guy we've been talking about all offseason.
Wow.
The hype train is at full steam ahead. Right now his ADP is at the QB6, so you're going to have to pay up for him. But look, I would not debate you at all if you are all in on Kyler Murray being a fantasy MVP, a guy that will win you a league this year. There's another year of experience coming in for both Murray and his head coach, Cliff Kingsbury. In his rookie production in his first year, where obviously he won Offensive Rookie of the Year, we'll talk about what those specific stats were, but his weapons were pretty brutal. He had 121 targets go to Damier Byrd, Keyshawn Johnson, and Pharaoh Cooper. And he was the QB7 last year with those weapons. And his rushing stats were incredible. He was giving you a floor of 5 points per game, 5 fantasy points per game, with 93 rushing attempts for 544 yards and 4 touchdowns, all on the ground. That was 3rd in rushing attempts, 2nd in rushing yards, and he was 9th in pass attempts as a rookie. So there is a case to be made here for the massive, massive increase in volume, but also touchdown regression that we could see. Last year, the Cardinals were 29th in the NFL in red zone touchdown percentage. Only 45% of their red zone trips converted into touchdowns. Now you add in DeAndre Hopkins. Kenyon Drake joins the offense late last year. They moved from the air raid more to this run raid, and Kenyon Drake helps Kyler in the offense, whether it's in the red zone, whether it's through the check down game on these short options where he can just hand it off, or even do option reads where he's either taking it himself or handing it to Drake. So Drake being there opens up some more for him. And in 2019, the Cardinals were 31st, literally second to last in terms of time of possession. So I think that's only going to improve with the improvements to this offense everywhere. And
Absolutely.
They were 17th in points per game. I think they could be near top 10 this season. We add in the fact that their defense, I know they added some pieces. They picked up Isaiah Simmons in the draft, Devin Kennard in free agency, but this should still be a bottom half defense in 2020. So, look, I think they're going to go up in almost every metric. They're going to regress, and they've added pieces. Like, I'm not in on DeAndre Hopkins at his ADP, but I think he's only going to help Kyler, and that's what you like to see. We talk about these quarterbacks. Like, we love Tom Brady because he has all the weapons. We love Matt Ryan because he has a ton of weapons, and the volume's going to be there. Kyler Murray could do exactly what those guys could do and then give you, the second most rushing attempts in the NFL this season with scores on the ground as well. So I just love Kyler this year. He could explode onto the scene. Every year we see it. It was Mahomes. It was Lamar Jackson. It's a rookie, and that's why you're not able to get Kyler, super, super late in drafts, because everyone's kind of caught on to this being it. And I know this year everyone loves Joe Burrow, but really if there's going to be a guy that is going to explode and be the MVP at the quarterback position, if I had to put money on it, it'd probably be Kyler Murray.
Man, I like it. I'm with you on the Kyler Murray hype train. I mean, we see it time and time again. These guys that are winning you fantasy leagues are quarterbacks that break out and take that jump to tier 1. We saw it 2 years ago with Mahomes. We saw it last year with Lamar Jackson. And as a mobile quarterback, I think everyone is looking to Kyler Murray, waiting and expecting this to happen. And for his sake, I really hope it does. This Cardinals offense is loaded. They should be a ton of fun. As someone who owned Kyler Murray in fantasy last season, I will say there were a lot of frustrating games, a lot of rookie mistakes, times where he had 1 fantasy point at halftime and ended up with 20. So I love the pick, and I'm excited to see what they can do this season. So I'm going to go ahead and come to the table with my first fantasy MVP, and I'm going to start with more of a chalk pick, and I'm going to get a little bit deeper as we go. But this first guy is Davante Adams.
Yes.
And for me to make Davante Adams my fantasy MVP, because he's already going in the back of the first, early second round, this is me planting my flag and saying Davante Adams is going to have a historic season in 2020. I'm talking like Adams is going to be the Michael Thomas of the wide receiver position in 2020. I see a monster year coming. And this shouldn't be any surprise to anybody. Over the past 4 seasons, he's been the wide receiver 11, wide receiver 8, wide receiver 1, and wide receiver 6 in PPR points per game. So Davante Adams is a proven stud. He's someone that's been doing it for years, and if you lock him in as your wide receiver 1, you know exactly what you're getting. And look, I know there's this narrative around Davante Adams only having 1 1,000-yard season in his career. Well, guess what?
Silly.
He literally had 997
dumb.
yards twice, and one of those he missed 4 games. And then there's another season where he would have gotten there, but he missed 2 games. So I don't want to hear it. Like, he's been the primary or one of the primary targets for Aaron Rodgers for 4 seasons. And if he would have had a full bill of health, he would have had 1,000 yards in 3 of those seasons and 997 yards in the other with double-digit touchdowns. So I don't want to hear any hate on Davante Adams at all. But for me this year with Davante Adams, it just comes down to the target volume, man. I mean, 2 seasons ago, Adams had 169 targets, which is ridiculous. And last season, he was on pace for 169 targets for a full 16 games. So when I look at 169 targets in back-to-back seasons, I think, one, he can repeat it this year, and two, I think that could actually jump up to be a lot closer to the 185 targets that Michael Thomas saw last year. Last season with that 169 target pace, it was the fewest pass attempts Rodgers has thrown in a fully healthy season since 2014. Wow. So if he regresses a little bit more to where he normally is in terms of pass attempts for a full season, the overall volume on this offense is going to go up, and I don't think Davante Adams' target share is going to change. The Packers did nothing to bring in help on this receiving core this offseason, except Devin Funchess, who opted out for the season. So they're literally left with less than they had last year in terms of pass catchers.
The situation is better this year.
It is better. The situation is better, and this is like so narrative street, but Rodgers, like everyone's talking about, he has a different fire lit under him this season. He is pissed off. He needed help in the draft, and they went out and drafted his replacement, and then a running back that they didn't need in round 2. I think Rodgers is out to prove something this season. I think he is going to go absolutely ham this year, and if that's the case, it's going to have to be Davante Adams. I mean, the volume is one thing, and the best thing about Adams is the volume could take him to absolutely elite status in terms of receptions and yards. But one thing that's his strong suit is catching touchdowns. He had 3 straight double-digit touchdown years before last season, second in the NFL in receiving touchdowns each of those seasons. So I think he's going to get back there this year. And when I look at what happened last year, one, he did miss 4 games. But if you really dig into the red zone numbers, he had 12 receptions in the red zone last season, 8th in the NFL in red zone receptions, but only 3 went for touchdowns. So a 25% rate of red zone catches that went for touchdowns. When you actually look at the 3 years prior, 63% of his red zone receptions went for touchdowns. And I did a film breakdown on Davante Adams. It's on our channel if you want to check that out. But there were several occasions where he should have converted for a touchdown in the red zone, but he was either tackled at the 1 or Rodgers threw it behind him, or there was like a lucky tip by a defender, batted down at the line. So Adams legitimately could have still been close to 10 touchdowns last season, even in less games. I have him as my wide receiver 1 this season. I am super confident in that. If he plays 16 games, I think there is no reason he will not be the wide receiver 1 in all of fantasy football. I've got him in several leagues, and I am super excited to see what this Packers offense can do this season. I think they're going to be back, Stef, and if you have Davante Adams on your team, you should feel pretty good about it going into 2020.
When you watch Adams play, like he's just literally beating guys on the outside, and he does this signature little skip.
His release ability and his ability to use his body is unbelievable.
He does this little skip at the start of almost all of his routes, which makes anything that he does super ambiguous. It's not like these defenders can look at his film and be like, okay, I know that he's going to run.
He hits him with the hezzy.
And sets him up, and then he knocks him down. And like, you know, I know after the film room we were talking, like you were saying, look, like I was trying to break down the film, but half of the plays here are just Adams running a fade and Rodgers just throwing it up for him. So, no, I think he's going to dominate, man. You know I'm hyped for Adams as well. I think he could be – actually, he will be – put it on record – a fantasy league winner in 2020.
Let's go.
I got another wide receiver I want to talk to you about. It's not something I'm projecting to happen, but I would not be surprised at all to actually see it happen based on what we saw in 2019. It's DK Metcalf. And he could absolutely explode this season. His ADP has him around. So the wide receiver 21 right now, Tyler Lockett, who I do have projected ahead of him, is only going a few spots higher at the wide receiver 18. But look, there's a world where Metcalf absolutely explodes. And it could happen from 2 things. He could blow up from the let Russ cook movement, where we see the Seahawks actually throw it at a decent clip this year. The last couple seasons, they've been near the bottom of the league in terms of pass attempts with this run-heavy approach. Last year, they were at 517. Before that, 420. So there was that era in 2016, 2017 where Wilson was airing it out and still being extremely efficient, the same that he has been on that, you know, almost sub 500 pass attempt volume that he's been at. The other thing that for Metcalf that could take it over the top, though, are the double-digit touchdowns that he could potentially see. We saw huge improvements on film, both in terms of his route running and the way Seattle was using him. You know, he came in as a polarizing prospect. Everyone said, all he can do is run fades and go routes. And last season we did see that. We saw limited route usage and we saw a low catch rate. But there's a world where Lockett is the 1B to DK Metcalf's 1A in this offense. And something that's really hard to project because all we have is the data that we have up to this point is improvement. And for a rookie in his first season, I thought Metcalf was incredible. Lockett had 110 targets to Metcalf's. Again, a rookie here had 100 targets. That almost never happens. He had almost the same target share as Tyler Lockett. 900 yards, 7 touchdowns. He was top 20 in yards per reception, top 20 in deep targets. Now, he was 6th in the league in drops and had that 58% catch rate, but that's what you expect from a rookie who was only on the field for 87% of snaps. That was 31st among receivers. So you add an increase in volume. You add a world where he is the guy where those touchdowns remain the same, if not creep up. I mean, he had 7 as a rookie. I think that's only going to improve as he gets better on this offense. And there's going to be a premium on all of Metcalf's receptions that I think could take him to incredible territory, elite production territory, because he's not going to be top 15 in targets, but his yards per reception, his touchdown volume, his red zone usage are going to be incredible. We've seen Russell Wilson's efficiency literally get better every single year, even though over the last 2 seasons he's been passing less and less, which is just crazy to me. And Wilson's been top 5 in deep ball attempts, top 5 in completed air yards, top 5 in passing touchdowns over the last 2 seasons. There's a world where that all gets funneled to Metcalf. We saw some injury worries come up with Lockett, and so in a scenario like that, where if Metcalf is the guy, he's going to explode. And the playoff games that the Seahawks had in 2019.
The playoff game was unreal.
That was the sneak peek. 7 receptions for 160 yards and a touchdown. The other game, he had 4 receptions for 60 yards. So, that could be his ceiling and his floor, where it's 10 points on his worst week, and then, in his boom weeks, you're getting over 20. And if we see the consistency stay there, and if the Seahawks can pass a little bit more, man, I just see the sky's the limit for DK Metcalf. We see his upside from a physicality standpoint, the way that this man is built. If he can put it together with Russell Wilson on a high efficient offense, it's going to happen.
I like the call. I mean, if I'm going to be honest with you, Steph, I haven't drafted DK a lot of places.
Not projecting it.
Yeah, of course, not projecting it.
I think Tyler Lockett will actually be the recipient of this, honestly, but I'm just saying it's not out of the range of outcomes for Metcalf.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. I haven't drafted DK in a ton of places. I don't have a ton of shares of him, but it's not because I don't like DK as a player. There's just a couple other guys in that tier that I'm a little bit higher on. But for DK Metcalf, what you've said is DK Metcalf has this in his range of outcomes. And if DK Metcalf comes out and he goes for 1,400 yards and 10 touchdowns this year, I would not be that surprised. Again, not projecting it to happen, but there is a world where that's the case. And if that happens, DK Metcalf's winning you a league. So I love it. He could be. I mean, we talked about it the other day about this year's Davante Parker. And I think Metcalf is coming in with much more hype and much more steam than Parker did last year. But someone who just week in and week out just keeps on producing and producing and producing and big plays and touchdowns, ending up as a wide receiver 1. That could be DK Metcalf this season. There's a lot of hype around him. We know he's a freak athlete. And again, I think there's a world where it happens, and it wouldn't surprise me one bit. So I love calling your shot here. I would love to see Russell Wilson really open it up and throw it 35, 38, 40 times a game. That would be nuts. If Russell Wilson threw it 600 times this season, would you, if you knew Russell Wilson was going to throw it 600 times, would Lockett and DK be top 15 in your rankings?
Yes. No, that would be. That's.
For me too.
You're seeing that in Tampa Bay.
Possibly top 12.
You're seeing that in Tampa Bay with Evans and Godwin. You're getting pretty close to that in Atlanta on offenses that throw it 600 times with 2 great weapons, both on the outside and guys that can hop into the slot, guys that are going to be used in the red zone. So no, I think they would both be in the top 15 range. And this season, I love Lockett as kind of the what's the most likely scenario. I want Lockett in a lot of places, and I have him in a lot of places as my wide receiver 2 or my desperation wide receiver 1 if I'm loaded at the other positions. Whereas Metcalf this season to me is a perfect flex because he's a guy who could explode. The floor may fall off at times, but if he does explode, you're going to want him on your roster. But Alex, let's move over here. Enough on DK. Let's hear another one of your fantasy MVP candidates for 2020.
This one I'm so hyped about, Steph. I have him in every league I'm in.
Oh man!
And if you've been with us since day one, you're gonna know everything I'm about to say. But for all of you who are new, also shout out to all the new subscribers. We've really been picking up steam here, and we're trying to get back to you guys on all your comments and questions. But it's Tyler Higbee. If you're new, there's still time to jump on this hype train. There's plenty of room. I'm the conductor here. Choo choo. This one is I am so hyped about Tyler Higbee this year. And here's the thing. I have to be realistic and recognize that even though I'm super hyped about his upside, it still is high risk, high reward. Before I get into it, like, I'm going to talk about all the things that point to him being what I think he's going to be this season, but I have to recognize there's risk involved in that as well. But the beautiful thing is, even if Tyler Higbee is a bust this season, you're only drafting him as tight end 9 in full PPR leagues. That's round 7. That's that territory where you want to take these shots on league winners, and if they bust, they don't kill you. And that's the beauty about Tyler Higbee. I don't think there's a world where Tyler Higbee finishes as the tight end 9. I think he's a top 5 guy, or he's not in the top 12. And I'm putting my chips, obviously, on Tyler Higbee being an absolute stud this season. Even today, at the time of this recording, there was some hype coming out of camp that's saying Jared Goff is going to have Higbee as one of his main targets this season. That got me so hyped. I wanted to run through a brick wall.
The camp reports are just nuts this year, I will say.
And here's what I'll tell you. If you haven't heard of Tyler Higbee, he finished last season as the tight end 8 in just 15 games. But in the last 5 games of the season, he was the tight end 1. 21.4 points per game down that stretch. It was an absolute tear. It was historical. I'm not saying he's going to put up that 5-game tiny sample size for the whole season, but let me tell you this, Steph. We all expect regression for the full season for Tyler Higbee. If he regressed 25%, which is a lot, that's a fourth of your production. If he only put up 75% of the production he had in that 5-game stretch for a whole season, he would have 103 receptions, 1,252 yards, and 5 touchdowns. That would have been the tight end 1 for the full year last year. If he just put up 75% of his production from that stretch, which I think is probably the ceiling here, but that's the ceiling. And even if it's 60-65%, he's going to be a top 5 guy. So all signs are pointing toward a big year. And you might say, why did he randomly break out in a 5-week stretch? And a lot of it was due to the shift to the 12 personnel in weeks 1 through by the way, 12 personnel is 2 tight ends on the field, 2 receivers, and a running back. 11 personnel is 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back. So weeks 1 through 12, only 14% of snaps were in 12 personnel. In those last 5 games, 13 through 17, 34% of the snaps were in 12 personnel. Higbee was on the field much more, and he was actually featured in the offense. In the first 10 games, he only exceeded 60% of snaps 3 times. In the last 5 games, he played at least 86% of snaps in each game.
Damn.
I mean, McVay loves this guy. He thinks he is an absolute weapon. I did a film breakdown on Higbee as well. It made me absolutely fall in love with him after I was already on the hype train. And what I didn't realize was not only was Higbee a threat downfield, but they literally designed plays. Like there was one play where 3 guys were on the right, and they all ran slant routes to set a pick for Higbee just to get wide open across the middle. They had him running as a tight end multiple times per game. They were absolutely facilitating touches to him because they believe in his talent. And, you know, all things aside, there's actually opportunity for positive regression in terms of touchdowns. He had that incredible stretch, and this stat actually blew my mind because it seems like he was playing out of his mind bananas last year, but he was 4th in the NFL in red zone receptions. He had 14 red zone receptions, but only 3 of them went for touchdowns. So, you know, as a guy who got 28% target share in the red zone last season, he should have massive touchdown upside this year if he can maintain that target share in the red zone and get the kind of red zone targets and receptions in 2020. I think it's going to happen. The Rams had the 3rd highest number of targets to the tight end position in 2019. So look, you know, if I haven't been clear, draft Tyler Higbee in the middle of your draft. If you want to, take another deep shot on someone later because Higbee is one of those more volatile guys that's not quite as proven. But if Tyler Higbee hits, man, he's going to win you your league. And I hope he does because that means I'm probably going to win all of mine. So I couldn't be more hyped about this guy. I'm all in.
It's the only thing I can actually think of, like, because we know LA is going to pass a ton. Their defense got worse. They lost Brandon Cooks. There's a ton of vacated targets. The only thing that could derail the Higbee hype is Gerald Everett coming back healthy. That's the only thing. And it's hard to see.
Exactly. That's fair.
Everett, like after what we just saw from Higbee when he was literally being relied upon, like you said, designated screens. They were taking Todd Gurley, who we saw a massive dump, a massive fall off in his targets in these designated screens. They were giving those to Tyler Higbee. Like if I don't know what more you need to see to be in on Higbee. I'm not as high as you are on him, but I mean, a lot of guys, especially in a lot of home leagues this year, guys that just aren't as up to date. Tyler Higbee's been falling massively, and so he's been a great pickup late for me.
If you are in a league and, this is why you follow football and keep track of things through the end of the season, because if you were like 3-7 through the first 10 games of last year and you stop paying attention, you literally have no idea who Tyler Higbee is, and you're going to miss out. So that's why I'm here to tell you, take Tyler Higbee, and you will hopefully not be disappointed. I'm feeling pretty confident about it. But, Steph, I'm going to toss it back over to you. I want to hear your last fantasy MVP candidate for the 2020 season. This one better be good.
Oh, it's going to be good. It's going to be juicy because, you gave us your tight end and Tyler Higbee. I'll give you mine. It's pretty chalk, just like your Adams pick, but it is Mark Andrews. He's going right now. Whoa. He's actually crept up a lot.
He could have
lately.
been one last year. Before you get into it, I'll give you the floor, but this better actually be good, because if Mark Andrews is going to be fantasy MVP, you're telling me he's going to have a insane breakout this year, more than he even had last season, which would be incredible.
Dude, I think all signs point to improvement in almost every category for Andrews, and I'm going to break it down here. His ADP, even just like a month ago, was the tight end 4. He's now crept up to the tight end 3. So at this point, maybe this isn't a hot take anymore. I was all on the Andrews hype train last year, and he helped me in a lot of places. Him and Eckler just carried me into playoff runs. But what Andrews did is, not only is he going to be a league winner, but he's also a super safe play. He fully solidified himself as a great tight end last season. The thing that puts it up over the top is that Andrews' upside is insane, especially when you look at Ertz, Waller, or anyone else outside of Kelsey and Kittle, and he's a big part of an offense that is electric. The Ravens were the highest scoring offense in the league. They led the league in points per drive, yards per drive. Lamar Jackson led the league in touchdown percentage at 9%. And Andrews led all tight ends and almost all pass catchers last season outside of Kenny Golladay with 10 touchdowns, double-digit touchdowns. For reference, Kelsey and Kittle each had 5 last season. Andrews scored a touchdown every 10 targets, and he almost got 100. And on top of that, he was getting
Can he sustain that, though?
That's the thing. He led all tight ends with 20 receptions or more in average depth of target with 10.6. Andrews was third in air yards behind Kelsey and Ertz, both of which had 40 more targets than he did.
Sheesh.
And what could really take him over the top is the game scripts and the range of outcomes that could happen if there's regression for this Ravens incredible offense. And I'm not a guy who's in love with the regression for regression's sake. I want to see a reason for why that regression could occur, because I do think the Ravens could still be as good as they were on the ground, hyper efficient and just funneling volume to their backs. But if the Ravens need to pass, if they aren't as dominant as last year, think back to that playoff game against the Titans. They were down in the second half. Lamar Jackson had 59 pass attempts. And even if the game scripts don't go that way, Mark Andrews is still great. Alex, you've talked about this before on the show. The Ravens only trailed for 8 minutes and 44 seconds per game in 2019. That was number 1 in the NFL by over 3 minutes per game. He's only 23 years old. Hayden Hurst is gone. That was 10% of the Ravens' target share. I'm expecting the same, if not better, for Andrews in 2020 compared to 2019. And here's the last point I'll make on Andrews. His snap share was abysmal.
That's what I was going to bring up, Steph. How did you know? His snap counts blew my mind. I was like, how on earth did he have this good of a season when he was not on the field?
Like, literally, if you put him in that range of all the other top 5 tight ends, he should have 30 or 40 more targets than he had and should have been on the field 4 times as much as he was. He was only on the field for 43% of snaps last year. That was 67th amongst tight ends. I mean, that's nothing.
Wait, 67th amongst tight ends? How many teams are there?
Exactly.
That's nuts.
Exactly. That's the thing with Andrews. Where if he is on the field, let's say it doesn't even have to be anything crazy. Let's just say 70% of snaps, 60% of snaps. The ceiling is going to be insane because there's such a premium on every single one of the targets that he gets. He's an efficient red zone monster. He's used heavily there. And Lamar Jackson has used his tight ends. I mean, even in college, we were seeing him leverage those guys. So a lot of these younger quarterbacks coming in, they love using the tight end in the red zone. And you add that on top of the depth of target that Andrews is going to see. It's just, dude, I can make this take to just say take Andrews in the middle of the 4th because that's what I've been doing. But the reason I'm doing that is because not only is he super safe, he also has that upside to be insane this year, to literally be the tight end one. So I love it this season.
Yeah, dude, I'm actually with you. The upside is there because you kind of came full circle. At first, I was like, I don't know, like you're talking about how efficient he was last year, but what if he regresses back to the mean? Wouldn't that make him worse? But the more I think about it, even if his efficiency does dip, I think there is so much more runway in terms of opportunity and volume for him because you spelled it out. The snaps were low. Hayden Hurst is gone. Hayden Hurst targets and snap share is now available for Mark Andrews to be on the field more. And like you said in that playoff game, we saw Lamar air it out, and Lamar Jackson only threw the ball 401 times last season. We could, if they're not as dominant, we are going to see them throw the ball a lot more this year, which is going to lead to many more targets for Mark Andrews. So Mark Andrews had 98 targets last season. He could – like 130 targets, that seems like it's in the range of outcomes for Mark Andrews.
Dude, even 120.
Case, even
120.
Even 120. 20 more targets, 22 more targets. He could be a guy who gets, 70, 75 catches, 1,100 yards, and 12 or more touchdowns. And that's tight end one or two numbers right there. So
exactly,
I love it. And the sky's the limit. He could even potentially put up bigger numbers than that if all really falls right. So you got me there, Steph. I like it. I love this Ravens football team. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. Interesting for me to see, their blueprint all season was to run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. We saw the dominance from the ground game. We saw the dominance from Lamar Jackson, even the efficiency with him through the air. And then that playoff game, everything changed. And for me, if we come out through the first 4 games of the season and teams are figuring out Lamar, the defense is giving up some points, and they're playing from behind, and Lamar is throwing the ball.
Lost Earl Thomas
35 times a game. This offense could be ridiculous this season. I do expect them to be pretty dominant on the ground again, but little to no chance they're as dominant as last season, and that volume should go up. So I love the pick. I saved the best for last.
Here it comes.
If you thought I was getting hyped up about Tyler Higbee, I saved the best for last. And another guy who not only have I been high on him all offseason, but I've actually been rising on him as we have gotten closer and closer to the year. And it's funny because there's one piece of news that could send this tower completely crumbling down. And I'll just say it, it's Ronald Jones. It's Ronald Jones. And as we're recording this, we are in the thick of it. Literally right before we started recording, probably 10 minutes before we started recording, the Leonard Fournette to the Bucs rumor started. So I'm kind of on full tilt right now because I have Ronald Jones in pretty much every single one of my leagues. Please don't be Tampa Bay. Please don't ruin my Ronald Jones hype, Leonard Fournette. Do not ruin this for me. Please don't be Tampa Bay. Please don't ruin my Ronald Jones hype, Leonard Fournette. Do not ruin this for me.
No.
Please don't ruin my Ronald Jones hype, Leonard Fournette. Do not ruin this for me. But I'm going to make this take because I don't think they need Leonard Fournette. Fournette, do not crash this party. This is Ronald Jones' backfield, and I'm going to tell everybody why. Ronald Jones is the guy. Bruce Arians, if you're listening, don't sign Leonard Fournette, and I will convince you right now. First of all, you're not having to pay a ton.
Dude, hold on. Roto World.
Breaking news?
I'm just kidding.
Dude. Dude, you can't do that to me.
I'm sorry. I had to scare you. I had to give you that heart attack moment. I'm sorry. Continue. My bad.
Where was I? The first thing. Ronald Jones is the RB30 right now. You can get him in the 7th round. Similar to the Higbee situation, this is where you're taking upside, guys. Ronald Jones is that guy. He is going to be the dominant running back in Tampa Bay. Bruce Arians has said it time and time again, said he's the starter, said he could be an every down back, said he could be the workhorse in this offense, said he's improved his pass protection, improved his pass catching, and even LaShawn McCoy, a veteran who they signed, said, yeah, Ronald Jones is the starter, and he's one of the best backs I've ever seen in the league. And that's coming from LaShawn McCoy, who's pretty darn good himself. So to me, people are hating on Ronald Jones for his first 2 seasons in the NFL, but if you watch the tape from last season, he made jaw-dropping plays time and time again. No, he wasn't quite as consistent all the time, and this Bucs offense struggled a little bit, and it was dysfunctional, but the dude's got talent, and he's being drafted right now. This is what gets me. He's being drafted as RB30 right now, and last season, in what felt like a nightmare bust year for him, he was the RB25 in full PPR. He only played, talking about snap counts when we were just discussing Mark Andrews, Ronald Jones only played 36% of snaps last season. Now, I'm not saying we need him to get up to 80% of snaps, but if he gets 60% of snaps in this offense, he is going to go off. And Peyton Barber is gone. I know, hopefully, if they don't sign Fournette, they did bring in Keyshawn Vaughn as a third-round rookie, but I'm not worried about that. I think Ronald Jones is the clear goal line back, and he's the clear first and second down back, and he'll get some passing game volume as well. And what really stands out to me about Jones is just how effective he was inside the red zone, in that scoring zone, and just how limited volume he got last season. And I think we could see that regress to the mean this year. I mean, last year, Jones only had 2 attempts inside the 5. He scored on both of them. And he only had 10 attempts inside of the 10, and he scored on 6 of them, which was the best touchdown rate of all running backs inside the 10-yard line, who had at least 10 attempts. So now that he's going to be the feature goal line back, now that this guy named Tom Brady, don't know if you've heard of him, is in town, Ronald Jones on this offense is going to have scoring opportunity after scoring opportunity after scoring opportunity. Think of some of the running backs in Tom Brady's career: Sony Michel, LeGarrette Blount, Stephen Ridley, Lawrence Maroney, Corey Dillon, even Jonas Gray had a 4-touchdown game. If you are the feature running back on first and second downs and on the goal line in a Tom Brady offense, you have an insane amount of touchdown upside. I would not be surprised to see Ronald Jones score 12 touchdowns this season, or maybe even more. The touchdown upside is there. He's going to go for 1,200 yards if he stays healthy this season. And I'm not concerned about Ogunbowale. I'm not concerned about Keyshawn Vaughn. I'm definitely not concerned about LaShawn McCoy. I am a little concerned about Fournette, but we're going to assume they are not going to sign Leonard Fournette. And by the time you're watching this, hopefully he has gone ahead and signed elsewhere. But Steph, I have Ronald Jones projected as my running back 20, and I think the upside is much, much higher than that. If all things go right, Ronald Jones is going to be an RB1 this year. I think that's his upside.
I mean, the ceiling is there. The ceiling is certainly there for Jones. He has a few things going against him. But, man, I think people are overvaluing Keyshawn Vaughn. Ogunbowale, believe it or not, does scare me a little bit. And here's the thing. In this offense, you talk about it being Tom Brady's offense. Where this could all crumble is if let's say, Rojo misses a pass protection, just like last year when he did it, and Tom Brady takes a shot, Ronald's not getting out on the field. He's the one dictating who's going to be in this offense, what weapons get used. Maybe he'll still be the goal line back, but where I see, even if Ogunbowale and Vaughn are taking touches away, with him being the primary goal line guy, that's where all the upside lies. To where even if you look at like a Nick Chubb, a Josh Jacobs, even a Derrick Henry. I know I'm comparing him to guys that are in a completely different atmosphere relative to Ronald Jones, but these are guys that just get a bunch of usage on the ground. They get the goal line carries, and they don't get a ton of passing work. And that's the tier, that's the ceiling that Ronald Jones could jump up to if he continues to improve. We've heard about the offseason weight that he's added on. And look, I'm not reading into that. It seems like every time, whether it's a weight gain or a weight.
Yeah, I've gained weight during quarantine. What's different? What's the difference?
Yeah, I added 20 pounds over the offseason too, but I'm not getting any praise for it. But, I mean, whether a guy's adding weight, dropping weight, it seems like it's always a positive thing. But all I'm taking away from that is to say, look, Rojo knows he's the guy, and he's doing everything he can to get himself right for this season. So, look, this is it. It's his backfield to lose. So I'm with you on the ceiling being there. And if he can come out, show some improvement, and be the guy in this offense, you're going to be so right on this one.
I mean, here's the thing. He had 172 carries last season. If he gets 250 carries this year, he's going for 1,000-plus yards. And his big play potential is there as well, which is something I love about Ronald Jones. He can get it done on the outside. He's fast enough to really turn the burners on. He can get it done between the tackles because he's got that muscle. But he makes so many dynamic runs. And when I did his film breakdown, all of his touchdowns, it wasn't like we give it to you and you cram it up the middle for a touchdown. It was like we give it to you, you make a guy miss, and you truck a guy for a touchdown every single time on all 6 of his touchdowns. And Ronald Jones, on 172 carries last year, had 6 runs of 20 or more yards. That was more than Zeke had on 301 carries. So, and that was behind a shoddy offensive line as well, and a dysfunctional Tampa Bay offense. So, look, man, Ronald Jones.
We haven't even talked about the O-line either. I mean, that O-line's going to improve. They were 23rd last year, according to Football Outsiders. They brought in Tristan Wirfs, who was probably my steal of the draft, if it's not like CeeDee Lamb. But they also signed another offensive tackle in Joe Haig. He has 35 starts in 4 seasons with the Colts. So, like, everything points to Rojo being on the upswing. We'll just see if he can take it and run with it, and that's what you're seeing here, man. I love it as a candidate to win you a league, and for his ADP,
Let's go.
This fits into his ADP as well. This is where he is a guy who is a mid-round league winner. I know drafts have already happened, but I love taking the upside shot on Rojo.
That's all we got for these fantasy MVPs, Steph. I'm going to summarize it really quickly. Your fantasy MVP candidates this season are Kyler Murray, DK Metcalf, and Mark Andrews. Mine were Davante Adams, Tyler Higbee, and Ronald Jones. So keep an eye on these guys. Look for them to explode. Hopefully they can come through this season. Some are a little bit more risky than others. And then some of those studs we're just thinking are going to have historic seasons. We got facts to back it up. And Steph, dude, the season's coming, man. We're going to know about some of these guys pretty soon. I can't wait for the week 1 games. I just can't wait, honestly. Obviously I want to watch the games, right? Like, I can't wait to be sitting in front of my TV with NFL Red Zone on, just consuming all sorts of football content.
I can only get so excited. Stop.
But I also can't wait for the week 1 reactions. Like, think about last year. Sammy Watkins is going for like 40 points, and we're saying, oh my gosh. And Tyreek Hill goes down. We're like, is Sammy Watkins about to be a league winner this year? He wasn't. And it's just going to be so fun to see these week 1 games go down, see which players break out, see who busts week 1, and see how everyone tilts and reacts. Dude, I'm getting myself a little too hyped right now. But Steph, I'll pass it back over to you. Anything else you want to add here before we sign out?
Let's go, guys. If you like what we're doing here, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on YouTube. If you're listening to this on your phone, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify, whether you're driving to work, working out, whatever, if you could give us a review if you like the show. It helps us a ton.
Yes.
We're trying to go full steam ahead into this season. And thank you guys so much, because like Alex and I were just talking about it, like, we did not expect to have any of the positive responses that we've had up to this point. So guys, thank you so much for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Peace.